welcome back to Pawsit Podcast. I'm Dr. Sam, and with me, as always, is Dr. Robert.
Yep. Hey guys.
Well, we're really excited to talk about cats and inappropriate elimination,
Oh
which
yeah.
basically, for those people who've never heard it called that, it's the cats that have issues urinating outside their litter box, and then the ultimate like the inability to actually urinate, which is where Robert is going to come in for sure today.
Yeah, we're gonna try and cover most of the big reasons why that stuff happens in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully try and help you fix those issues before you see me.
Before they happen.
Yeah, because that's no fun, trust me.
So I think we'll start with cats in general, just kind of talking a little bit about the fact that I think a lot of people think that cats, they get a cat because they're like, oh, that's gonna be real easy. Just gonna
Mhm.
get a cat. That's not gonna be hard at all.
They train themselves to go to the litter
They
box.
do everything. They're clean and
They ignore
throw
you.
out some food and
Yeah.
we're good. And I don't think people really understand, and I mean, I'm sure some people are starting to really understand how complex they are,
Mhm.
and just how many things that they need. And I think in this country specifically, there's a really big push for cats to be indoor only.
Yeah, they're definitely not like an easy bake oven where you set it and forget it. You gotta kind of
No.
like there's a lot to them in terms of management of them, the stuff that they need at home. There's so many things that we're actually learning about them even right now in terms of different
Mhm.
types of litter that they like, whether or not they like smells in the litter. Like there's a whole bunch of things that we'll kind of get into during this podcast, but they're complex creatures. They're
Yeah.
very intelligent. I think most people that own a cat will tell you that
Yeah.
they are the ones running the household most of the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it's we
You're
gotta give
owned
respect
by
where it's
your
due.
cat and not
Oh
the other way around.
yeah,
That
one
is for
hundred
sure.
percent. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I always joke with people. I'm like, they're these little aliens. They're these really cool little aliens that we live with, and we're just constantly learning from them, like every
Mhm.
day. And they amaze me. I think that a cat's ability to heal, when they are hurt is
Oh yeah.
second to none. Their ability to mask pain and disease is quite incredible, and
Unreal.
and really one of the biggest things that we have to deal with as doctors is sometimes being like,
Mhm.
no, there's something wrong here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and they can really hide it until it's a problem. But I think one of the biggest things, and the litter box thing is a huge one,
Mhm.
because it's one of the major parts of husbandry for cats. So like the things that we can do for their environment, and it's a really important thing.
Mhm.
If you think about, obviously cats have to urinate, they have to defecate. It's just
Yeah.
has to happen. But they also look at their home as theirs, like their domain. And so
Mhm.
they're also going to tell, like, kind of own that place by urinating places they shouldn't if they aren't given the proper environment, just
Yeah.
on the offset.
And there's like three, I think big categories of why cats will start urinating outside the litter box. It can be anything from, behavioral issues, which we'll probably touch on mostly during this podcast, but like
Mhm.
even orthopedic issues and then diseases themselves. All of them can cause them to urinate outside the litter box. So it takes a village to kind of keep an eye on them and really pay attention to those small details that you may not notice initially, because it'll help prevent some big problems long term.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so part of the very first thing you can do, whether you're rescuing a cat or whether you're getting a kitten, is making sure that their environment is optimal for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's really important to get to know your cat, and to try to figure out what you can do to really optimize their environment. And I guess before we get into that, where do you come down on, like, do you think all cats should be indoor, or do you think it's
I
okay
was
to
looking
have an
about
indoor
to
outdoor
ask you
cat?
the exact same question because I was like, what about Sam thinks about this?
Yeah.
Uh, it's tough because I actually walked on my street every day and I got six cats that live on my street and they own the place. And Loki goes nuts the entire time. But those cats are great because they stay close to home. Like they don't seem
Mhm.
to go very far. They just like to hang outside. And I know people that let their cats like hang out on their porches and stuff like that. I think it just depends on the area you're in.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of coyotes in other areas of San Diego, and those are tough areas to let your cat go roam wild.
Mhm.
Personally, so I think it really depends on the area that you're in because I do think they should be outside a little bit because some really want to be, and some cats are terrified outside. Like you'll figure it out pretty quickly.
Yep.
Like my one cat was terrified. He got outside, just sat there and didn't move. he came back inside and lived there forever.
I was very happy to
Um,
be inside.
yeah, he was fine. But other cats like stare outside all day. They want to be out. So
Hmm.
I think it's something like you said, get to know your cat in the beginning, kind of see what type of cat they are, and then see what you're comfortable with. Because as far as the husbandry goes, it gets a lot more complicated if they're outdoor cats too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I don't have a hard line. I know that there's a lot
Mm.
of veterinarians that do. I don't. I think it really
Okay.
depends on the cat. I think that there is risk if you choose to let your cat out, and there's risk if you choose not to. Because some cats, like you said, they want to be outside.
Yeah.
So those cats have a chance of having urinary issues or other issues that are stress related if
Mm.
they can't go outside and meet some of those needs that they have. But if you let your cat outside, they have the potential to get hit by a car. They have the potential to get into a fight with another cat. They have a potential to have an interaction with another dog or animal, like you said, in
Yeah.
your case, like a coyote or something. So there's risk. There's risk
Yeah.
indoors. If they get into chemicals they shouldn't, if they eat something they shouldn't, they get into medicine, there's risk. You
There
just have to
definitely
decide
is.
which one makes the most sense for your cat. I
And
think it's
especially, I think if
individual.
you adopt a cat that's originally outside already, that's a
Hmm.
tough transition for them to go from outside to inside and lose a lot of space very quickly. So
Yeah.
if you're ever going to adopt a later or older cat that you don't know where it came from, and it seems like it was an outdoor cat beforehand, something just to keep in mind that taking that away from them might cause you a lot of problems because cats, as we talked about, are little aliens. And unfortunately, one of their big diseases that they do get is that when they're stressed out, their hormones take it all out in their bladder. And that's why we
Hmm.
talk about inappropriate elimination in cats in the first place, because when they're stressed, it comes out in their urinary signs,
Hmm.
and it's complicated.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And they're very sensitive creatures. And I think that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when you do start to explore the idea of stress as a reason for behavior that we don't like,
Mm-hmm.
you really think like, what are they to be stressed about? I mean, they have their food, they have their water, like they have the life, man. Like, what are they stressed about? But really it can be things that are somewhat imperceptible to us. Like, why would that stress you out? But to them, that's their world and they're
Yeah,
stressed by it. So
yeah.
we can get into that a little bit. And I think going back to what you said about the indoor outdoor thing, in some countries like where they do make an effort to have an outdoor space, that's where
Mm-hmm.
people will have like catios and stuff like that,
Yeah,
where you can have like almost like a mixed space or like a screened in porch or something like that, where like you find that somewhere that like best of both worlds, or one of those things where like they can go out on the window or they have a run outside that's protected.
yeah,
So depending on how comfortable you are with that in your house, I think some people are like, that's
yeah,
not my part of my design element, so I'm not going to do
yeah.
it. um so I think, but those are some really cool things. And I
Mhm.
know like in Australia, I think like there are rules that you can let your cat out, but they have to be in by a certain time just because of
Oh, really?
predators and stuff like that. Yeah,
That'd be
I think
really
so.
hard to maintain. Like trying to cats don't listen to you anyway. Like what cat listens to their own names? Like,
Yeah.
hey Charlie, get in here. Like,
Come on.
yeah,
I
it's
guess if
like
you feed them every day at the same time, you can train a cat. It is
I guess that's true. I
possible
guess
to train
that
a cat.
they're very food motivated. Thank God for that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's probably the one saving
Yeah.
grace. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's crazy.
Yeah. But I think when you get into inappropriate elimination, like Robert said, I mean, there are those three big categories, right? So like
Mm.
I think if we're starting out with the beginning of their lives or when you're first getting a cat, orthopedic issues are probably something that you're going to run into later. So if you have a
Yeah.
cat that used to be really, really good about their litter box,
Mm.
and all of a sudden now is having accidents outside. I mean, number one thing you should do is take them to the vet and have their urine checked, have their
Yeah.
bladder checked. What does it look like? What does their urine look like?
Mm.
Um, are they do they have an infection? Do they have a stone? Do they have,
Yeah.
a stone in the bladder? I should be more specific,
That's good.
for people who don't know. And then, or no, a tumor, God forbid.
Yeah.
Or is there just a bunch of inflammation in there and no
From
infection?
stress. Yeah.
Right. And so those are some of the medical conditions that are like specifically to the urinary tract. But then, of course,
Mm.
kidney disease can cause them to drink and pee, and then sometimes
Diabetes.
yep, diabetes.
Mm.
I mean, there's quite a few things where you can start to see that first sign of disease start with litter box habits changing.
Yeah.
So ruling out an underlying disease, but also arthritis. If they can't step um into
Litter
their
box.
litter box, yeah. So
That's
sometimes
tough.
even having a discussion about and that gets me to kind of the first thing about litter boxes. Where do you have them? Location is a huge
Yeah.
part of when you're choosing. A lot of people think, okay, well, I'm just going to have one litter box and I'm going to put it in the basement.
Well, they don't go down there very often, or they don't like
That's
the
it.
basement. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so you have to be realistic about the fact that you have to have a setup where,
Mm,
depending on how many cats you have to have enough litter boxes. They always say the rule is like one more than the number of cats that you have.
mm.
It's a little
That's
bit
a good rule.
arbitrary. Truthfully, it's at least
Yeah.
that, right? You
Yes,
have to
at
have at
least
least
that.
that. And then the other thing is that you have to have them big enough that it's about 1.5 times the size of your cat,
Hmm.
so that they can get in there and, do what they
Do
need
the
to do.
business.
Hmm.
And
And
there's so
then,
many different styles too of like litter boxes.
yep.
Like, as I think you mentioned earlier, you can step into them, like step in and over them.
Hmm.
There's ones that don't have a top on them. There's,
And that can even be an issue too. Some cats
mhm.
won't go in one with a top.
Yeah, there's
So,
motorized ones with scare
mhm,
cats.
scare cats, yeah.
There's, and then that doesn't even get into the types of litter, which
Yep.
are,
Which is a huge part of
yeah,
it too. So
it's
sometimes the litter
huge.
substrate is, and sometimes you may have changed it because you went to
Mm,
the store and they were out of the one that you usually get. So you just grabbed this one and thought, well, hey, I'm just going to use this. And then your cat's like, oh no,
yeah,
I'm not going in that.
they don't transition well.
No, no, no. So knowing the substrate that you use in
Mm,
there is going to be a huge thing.
yeah.
And I also be sensitive to the fact that their sense of smell is so much better than yours. So having one of those really stinky ones, some cats
Yeah,
won't
it
do it.
goes both ways, I think. Like I said, that's if you haven't cleaned it frequently enough, it's
Oh,
stinky, they won't use it. And if it's one of those litters that's really lavendery or whatever type of smells they have
yeah.
nowadays. Cats don't like that either. They actually just kind of like
Mm,
neutral.
they
And
don't
there's a
know.
couple of cool products out there like deodorizers that are great
Hmm.
for removing the smell without putting a bad smell out there.
Right.
So it's definitely something for owners to consider in the beginning because that way your house doesn't smell, but neither does the litter box.
Right, right. Well, and the best analogy that I ever heard for cleaning a litter box,
Mm-hmm.
I was at a conference actually, and there's a doctor that's just like amazing with cats, right? She's like
Mm-hmm.
the best. And I was at her thing, and she's like, so when you're in a public bathroom and you
Mm-hmm.
go into the stall and somebody has already used that, do you flush the toilet or do you move to the next stall?
You move to the next cell every time.
And so if you didn't give your cats another stall, guess where they're going?
Yeah,
They're
that's a
going in the
great
litter
point.
box. Yeah. So that, everybody laughed because everyone's like, yeah, everybody does that. Nobody flushes the toilet, moves to the
Yeah,
next one. So
that's
you
actually
should
really
be,
funny. That's a
yeah,
really good
yeah,
example. I like
yeah.
that one. I might
So
use that now.
there you go. So you should be cleaning that litter box every single day. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
change the substrate every day, but you gotta scoop that out. It's gotta be clean.
Yeah,
If you have multiple cats, then you have to give them other options,
yeah.
and putting them in places that are quiet too, where they're not going to get scared of that litter box for any reason, is a really big deal too.
Yeah, and I said there's so many different types of litter boxes out there. Like I said they're motorized. Sometimes they can help with cleaning, but that's scary to them.
Hmm.
There's actually a really cool one. I don't know the company that makes it, but if people find it, let us know. Because an owner told me about the other day that it actually counts the number of time the cat goes in and out of the litter box. It's really smart actually
That
because when
is.
cats are having problems, they'll go in and out of the litter box more frequently. And she actually that's how she knew her cat was having a problem. And I was like, oh, but it didn't annoy the cat. The cat didn't mind it. It was a great
Yeah.
way for her to keep tabs. Like, oh yeah, you went in like 14 times a day compared to like three. Like that's
Yeah,
really
like
weird.
your normal is 3, and why are
Yeah.
you going in 14 times? And I think that is the thing, is that like, okay,
Mm.
it's bad enough when they're going more, right? But I
Yeah.
think the biggest emergency that we see, the one that we worry about, I think the most, right? The one that's most
Mm.
immediately life threatening. Not, they can all be life threatening
Yeah.
for one reason or another, but the one that's most immediately life threatening is when our male cats specifically. I know it can happen to
Mm.
females, but have you ever actually had it happen?
It's rare. Like once,
Yeah.
honestly, it's been so
There
rare.
would have to be like something else major going on, right?
It's
I mean,
usually cancer, like in
that's
most cases, like an
right.
obstruction. Sometimes are really even stones. I don't think I've ever seen a stone cause a problem.
Hmm. Yeah. And so what we're talking about is when a male cat is unable to urinate.
Mhm.
And so we call it blocking or a urinary obstruction. But most people would just say like, oh, my cat's blocked, they can't pee. And I think recognizing that is of the utmost importance, because sometimes they're like, oh,
Yeah.
they're constipated. And you're like, no, they
No.
can't pee.
Which
That's
also,
a medical emergency. So
oh,
I'll let I'll let Robert talk about that
Well, no,
one.
I'm just gonna give a shout out to the little cats out there that obstructed. Like the amount of pain they're in sometimes, I can't imagine that alone,
Oh,
and I just feel horrible for them because not being able to like. I think
not
we
being
all
able
know
to
sometimes
pee.
we have to go to the bathroom really badly. We're like, we got to find a bathroom. To have that urge and not be able to physically go, I can't imagine what that's like. So I uh, feel awful for them in the first place. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely something you'll definitely most time coming through an ER basis for, just because it happens at the most inopportune times.
Hmm.
You finally get home from work, you realize your cat's going in and out of the litter box for the last 3 or 4 hours, and like that's kind of odd. You might see some blood in their urine, or they're only dribbling urine, and that's usually a good indication you need to see a vet like ASAP. Because
Hmm.
if even if they're given like a drop or two, sometimes it means that's all they can get out, and their bladder is quite large.
Yeah.
So it's really important to see a vet ASAP
Hmm.
to make sure they're not obstructed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, they're in so much pain, like
Yeah.
Robert said. But the thing is it's not just the pain, it's also then what happens to your body. Um, if you can't urinate, there's things that have to come out of your body that have to be eliminated. And if they're not, it
Mm-hmm.
can cause major disturbances
Yeah.
that make them really, really sick.
Yeah, even people think about it. Your kidneys help filter all the toxins out of your body, and when you
Hmm.
can't, excrete those toxins, they just build up, and it's really like a just toxicity in your blood. You start feeling nauseous, you start vomiting.
Yeah.
They get really sick, and their potassium gets really high. So it's just dangerous. That's what it comes down to. It's just very dangerous.
Yeah.
It's something you do not wait for.
No, no, that's not one that can wait. And I think it's also another reason that if you're going to have a cat, especially a male cat, making sure that you optimize their in environment is so
Yeah.
important. And that you also start to know your own cat, like what's
Mm.
normal for your cat, and then have a relationship with your primary care vet. Because if we happen to be open, I know if somebody tells me my cat isn't urinating or they're going in and out of the litter box and they keep vocalizing when they're in the litter box. I'm like,
Mm.
bring them now, so I can feel their bladder.
Yeah.
If I can intervene before they're blocked, let's say sometimes
Hmm.
there is a stage before a cat is blocked where they're inflamed, right? So
Oh yeah.
sometimes it's not actually a blockage, but they can get they can get spasms,
Hmm.
or mucus plugs and things like that. But for sure, there's a time like if they have inflammation of their bladder, um, most of the time they actually don't even have an infection, which is interesting, at least in
Yeah, I
my
think it's
experience.
some crazy number. It's like I want to say it's like 90% of young cats, I'll say young male
Yeah,
cats, don't have a urinary tract infection. It's very rare for a young male cat to have a urinary tract infection. It changes as they get older with like diabetes and kidney
right.
disease. Those factors affect things. But yeah, if you're a young cat that's having urinary signs, there's a window of time, as you mentioned, that you're paying attention. Again, you'll see either blood in their urine, or they might be going more frequently. That's your window to say, hey, I need to do something ASAP, because otherwise, when they do get obstructed,
Yeah.
there's a couple protocols they've tried to do without unblocking them, but honestly, at the end of the day, you got to unblock your cat because
You
it's
have
just,
to. I mean, you
yeah.
have to. I know there's those rare stories out there every once in a while that's like, you know, hey, we'll try it if people don't have the money to do it or something like that. And
Hmm.
if there's, but I agree with you. I they
Yeah.
need to be unblocked. I mean, and it's awful because it's not just one day. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we're talking 3 days sometimes before you can pull that catheter. At least that's
Yeah.
my experience.
No, when they're bad, like it's a minimum of 48 hours. Like we usually, unless there's some huge financial constrictions,
Yeah.
it's
But
most
even
time you're
then, I mean,
saying,
sometimes then they're back in. You pull it too fast, they reblock, and then you're back at square one.
yeah, that's the biggest thing. They can reblock, even if we do everything right. And
Yep.
we'll talk about some things we can do. And I mean, that's a good place to transition to things we
Yeah,
can
it
do to
would
help.
for sure.
Um, I think one thing your vet will talk to you about is diet. That's a
Hmm.
big part of it.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
couple diets, like there's a Royal Canin, Urinate SO, I believe, and
Hmm.
then Hill CD. Both great
I
diets. They've
like the
actually,
multi-care. Yeah, I like the one with
oh,
stress.
I haven't tried that one yet. I've done,
C&D
I've done one.
multi-care with stress. Yeah.
It's
Uh,
nice.
it has some elements because a lot of this does have to do with stress for
Oh
these
yeah, a lot
guys.
of it. Yeah.
Hmm. And so if I personally like that one. I've found it to
Hmm.
be, not that I'm like a PSA for any
No,
one
no, but
specific diet, but
please, I
just
think we should
in
talk
my
about
hands,
diets at work.
that's worked well. And
Yeah.
then doesn't Purina also have you bar?
I don't use it. They might. Sorry for any
Yeah.
Purina fans out
They
there.
do. I mean, they
Yeah.
definitely have a diet.
Yeah.
I can't think of what it's called right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But that diet is really important for reducing their stress levels. Like in a lot of them, they've shown like significant decreases, like up to 80%, and the chance of reblockage. if it's on long, like on board long enough. But I've seen cats actually change their diet, like their owner couldn't get the food and they're off it for 2 weeks and they block again. Like it's that helpful sometimes. So
Mhm.
diet's probably one of the first big ones. I don't know if you want to carry on with a couple of them yourself.
Well, and I was just gonna say, too, also making sure that you are ruling out other like that they don't have a stone or something like
Yeah.
that too, because the food's also going to help them not to reform a stone, and especially in a cat, I feel like the percentage of them, they're almost always going to be the calcium oxalates that are,
Oh yeah.
like it's a super high percentage, and of course, those are the ones that you have to remove surgically. Those are not going to be dissolved. That's not
Yeah.
possible. Um, so I think that's a majorly important thing, and the thing that's really tricky about that too is even when you do everything right, they can reform.
Yeah.
So that can be a really hard thing. Um, and so I was gonna say actually, and I always tell my kitten owners to did you know that Ohio State? I know, I'm sorry, he's a Michigan fan,
Wow.
but
Jesus.
I have to say it. They actually have a really good website called the Indoor
I'm
Pet
sure they
Initiative.
do.
Do you know of this one?
I don't actually, so I'll let you take the wheel on this one.
No,
But
I didn't know because it's a really good resource
that's
for
cool.
how to optimize your home for
Oh,
an
cool.
indoor pet, right? So
Hmm.
it's called the Indoor Pet Initiative. They
Oh,
have
nice.
one for dogs and they have one for cats. I've actually never looked at the dog one because the
Hmm.
last time I looked it wasn't done yet. So I
Sure.
don't know if they've really worked on that yet, but the cat one is great because it's got information like about litter boxes, and it has some
Okay.
things about even just how to set up their resources, right? So cats like
Okay.
are very finicky about how they want things, right? They don't want their food and their water next to each other. They want their water bowl wider than their whiskers because it's
Hmm.
a, that's like a,
The whisker friction or sensitivity thing. It's
yeah, I can't think of what the name of it is right now too, but yeah, they
yeah.
have a thing with that. They need
Hmm.
places to climb, they need places to hide.
Hmm.
And when they so I mean like making sure that you're doing everything to address that will help to mitigate the stress. If you know there are certain triggers, like you have people that are going to be visiting,
Yeah.
there's things that you can do to mitigate that stress, and that's going to come in a wide range of things, right? So I mean, some cats do great if you have a feel away, which is like the pheromone diffuser or whatever.
Yeah. The wall
Um,
plug-in. Yeah.
yeah, it has to be plugged in for like 24 hours though for it to do anything. So you can't
Oh,
just like
really? I didn't
plug
know
it
that.
in.
Good to know.
Yeah, yeah, it has to be like in the air.
Makes
Um,
sense.
but a lot of times if I know that I have a cat that I know is really sensitive, like I
Hmm.
might actually run right for medication for like when I know that stressful
Yeah.
things are going to be happening. So if they're a cat that does well with, I mean, I don't know if I can say drug names, but like gabapentin is such a great thing
Yeah.
for cats, but trazodone for cats, I mean, is great also. I don't
I've
know if
used
you
Trazodone for cats. I've done a
can,
something
yeah.
Gallo recently, but
Yeah.
interesting. I'll
Hmm.
check it out sometime. We'll talk about it on
Yeah.
the side because I'm curious about how Trazodone works I guess yeah,
Really, the
I've
only
used
issue
Trazodone.
is getting them to take it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we have the gabapentin. I mean, I love gabapentin for cats. I really do. For
Hmm.
so many reasons, and I feel like in those cases, like you have someone visiting for the weekend or whatever, and it's
Hmm.
very safe to give it to them. It's
Yeah.
not going to harm them even with their if they have kidney issues or things like that, because of the way it's processed. Neither
Yeah.
would trazodone. I think it's
Oh
just
yeah, Trazone's safe too.
dosing it is harder, but
Hmm.
we have gabapentin compounded in marshmallow chicken flavored, I believe.
Really? Do cats like that better because they hate our cherry flavored one?
I mean, most people don't complain. And I feel
So
like they usually will tell me if they won't take a medication. So
yeah, that's true. I've had a lot of owners be like, "Can you get us an any other flavor?" I'm like, I don't make those decisions. I wish I did because
yeah.
cherry wasn't my favorite flavor growing up as a kid either. With all the medication stuff, I feel
Yeah.
like there's better
There's
flavors
actually a
than
lot of cat drugs that are flavored cherry. So I
yeah.
think that there must be some idea that cats like cherry.
I don't think they do, but
I don't know. Yeah. But I mean,
yeah,
marshmallow chicken sounds
I'd eat
delightful.
that. I like marshmallows. I like chicken, so why
Yeah.
not combine them, right?
Why not combine them? But I mean,
Sure.
because gabapentin does actually have a very, like, it is bitter.
Yeah,
Have you ever
that's not a
opened the
pleasant taste.
capsule and just tasted it?
Yeah, can't say that I have, but I'll take
I
your word
have.
for it. Yeah,
I wanted to know. I was like, I gotta know what's
yeah,
happening
no,
here.
and it's a good
Very
doctor
safe.
there.
Yeah.
Know what you're putting your patients through. That's a
I
very
mean,
good idea.
to be fair, I had to be on gabapentin, so it wasn't like I wasn't
Yeah.
actually supposed to be taking it. But just to
It's nice
say,
when we can relate to our patients though, because even
it
at
is.
doctors, they put a drop in my eye. It's like a numbing drop, and I was like, Oh, yikes, that stings up for a hot second. I was
I
like,
had the same thing happen. I was like, my eye is heavy. Now I know what I've been doing to
yeah.
dust this whole time.
And I feel kind of bad. I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. It's necessary, but just it makes you think. You
Yeah.
put them in
Now
your
I know what
spot.
you feel like. Yeah, exactly. The more
Yep.
you can be empathetic, the better.
Exactly. Yep. Can't disagree. I can't agree more.
Yeah.
But I think we
Um,
lost track of where we were at. But
no, we were just talking about blocking and stuff like that. So
oh yeah.
what do you, I mean, other than like getting them on a diet, what do you kind of tell people to do?
Water intake has always been the biggest.
Oh yeah.
I think besides diet, like those are one and two for me, just because whether or not they have a water fountain at home really encourages them to drink more. Cats, you've seen them drink out of water faucets all the time. They like running water, so most cats do. There's always the exception, but it really encourages a higher amount of uh, water intake, which is really important.
Hmm.
Afterwards, it's just
I
yeah,
usually try to make sure too that they like that their the food is also canned because the
yeah,
amount
that's a
of
great idea too.
moisture
Hmm.
is so important. And then the dry will kind of drive them to drink more, but it's just there's no contest. They need to be if they can be on
Right.
all canned, they should be. But
Yeah, I know.
that's
That's a great
another
call
thing
too.
I'll also talk about for an hour why cats should just be on more canned food and
I mean,
they're
there's so
getting
many
too much dry
benefits.
food.
Chronic kidney disease on the line, like it just makes more sense
And
for.
also the reason that they're all like morbidly obese is because they're just sitting there eating carbs all
Still,
day when they're eating their dry food. We'll talk about that another pot. How about that? We'll have a whole nother conversation about feeding cats.
Dr.
Um
Sam's solo podcast, wet food.
feeding cats. No, because there's so many misconceptions out there, and you even do have people
Mm,
being like, well, if we put them on this, like, what about their teeth? And I'm like, brush their
yeah.
teeth.
Brushing cats' teeth. I can't even imagine trying to do that.
You can do it. You can do it. But either way, it doesn't, I mean, it's all genetic for them anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
not that you shouldn't brush it, you should brush their teeth.
Yes.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
even some of us have bad genetics, we still brush our teeth. But
Yes.
anyway, again, see, there's a million podcasts just waiting to happen
Yes. We just need to know
right
your
there.
questions. I know, right? Actually,
So
we'll just make them
we are
ourselves afterwards.
compiling things to talk about in the future. And if there are questions that you have that you would like us to answer specifically, things that you really want us to deep dive into,
You can
hit
send
them with the
to
web, hit them with
podcast
the
at mybalto.com. So that way we all know where to go. And we'll get
wait,
your
say
questions.
it again because I was being loud. What
Oh,
is
you're
it
good.
again?
Podcast at mybalto.com.
Yeah. And then we will definitely make sure to answer any questions that people have.
Mm.
Um and getting back to it's not just male cats, by the way, that have
Yeah.
emergencies. Female cats also can have really, really awful urinary tract issues,
Mm.
or bladder issues, I should say. I mean, there are humans, women that I don't know if men, gosh, I don't know the answer to this, but get interstitial cystitis as well. Just like, I mean, I know women do.
I personally haven't, so I don't
We're
know.
not human doctors. We're just going
Yeah.
to put that out there.
Yeah.
We are
Very clear.
we are
Veterinary.
veterinarians. But no, there is a very, very real disease process that can happen where they get these really, really inflamed, painful bladders. And it's not because of a urinary tract infection. Again, I can't stress how important it is to make sure that you go to your doctor and check and don't just throw them on antibiotics, because a lot of times that's not going to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Husbandry, food, mitigating stress, and making sure you're dealing with that inflammation and that pain and giving them some comfort. To me, that's how I deal with those guys.
Yeah, and I think stress is such a big thing because the conditions that we're referring to, they're often called like feline idiopathic cystitis or FIC for short.
Mhm.
Um, that condition is just, it's such a stress related behavior that causes those urinary signs. Again, you can see blood, you can see straining, it looks uncomfortable, they might even yowl. Like it's very uncomfortable for that man. Doing like I had a cat have urinary signs because there was a dog barking across the street that had just moved in. Like something we may not think is that stressful, but to them
Right.
they just didn't really like dogs. And so, or my other neighbor introduced a new cat, just a kitten, just to the outside. They started feeding a cat once a week. I was a young kitten, and their cat did not like that new kitten and started having urinary signs afterwards. So
Yeah.
it's just very little things that can change what they do and what they don't like, and it's just important to pay attention.
Yeah. Even as simple as like you going away for the weekend,
Yeah.
and who you leave them with, or if you don't, if you just leave food out for them or something like that. And that can even be something. You have to know your cat. You have to know what they're okay with,
Yeah.
and plan for those times that you have to live your life. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go away on vacation. That's of course not realistic,
Yeah.
but there are ways to try to mitigate stress. And maybe if you have a cat that's super sensitive, um, don't bring a second cat in,
Yeah. And if,
and slow
yeah.
introductions if you do, but
And if you have a male cat, I know it's common for people like, oh, I'm gonna go away for 3 days. I'll put out a bunch of food and water. Have someone check on them. I can't
yeah.
tell you cats are stressed when their owner leaves and they're not checked on for 3 days because they put out 3 litter boxes and they have 3 water bowls and all the food available. One, a cat usually eats all the food in the first day anyway.
Right.
But after that, they get very stressed, and I've seen cats obstruct while their owner's away and there's no one there to see it happen. And it's usually sad situations. So
Yeah.
always have someone, just a neighbor, check on them, make sure they're doing okay.
Hmm.
That's a really big part. Check the litter box, make sure there's still urine and fecal material in there. That's a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, a story from my former life before I became a veterinarian. I used to just be I used to do like dog walking, pet sitting. I my
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we owned a little company that we did that in
Look at
California.
you.
And I actually was, this is not a urinary, well, actually that's not true. So I went to go check on these cats,
Hmm.
and the owner went away for the weekend, and so I was just going in a couple of times a day, make sure they got fed, change the litter box out, make sure everybody was doing well. And
Hmm.
there was one cat, he said, you'll probably never see this cat. This cat's like super super shy. You'll see the
Sure.
other one, he's really friendly, he'll come say hi to you. So I'd come in, and every single time I came in, there would be an accident right in front of this one specific spot in the wall.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's weird. And
Hmm.
so I would always see the other cat, and I was like, what's going on? I can't find the other one. I mean, I know it was never going to come out and greet me, but it's just weird that
Yeah.
this cat keeps going, not in their litter box, right in front of this wall. And so they were getting work done in their house. Turns
Hmm.
out that they had shut that cat in the wall. And
Oh my God.
I was going in, and by the second day that I hadn't seen the cat, and that this cat had had an accident every time I'd come, so it was the third visit that I had. I stayed there for a little while, and I just listened, and I heard the
What?
cat in the wall. And I
That's
called the owner and I said,
crazy.
I believe the people who were doing work on your bathroom locked your cat into the wall, and I have to open the wall to
That's
get your cat out.
horrible.
And he gave me permission to do it. I there'd been like a spot that had just been done, so I like opened it up. It wasn't
Oh,
like
they
done
take a
done. Do you know
sledgehammer
what I
to it.
mean?
I was like, go
No, no,
Sam,
no.
let's go.
It was like temporary. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like it
okay.
wasn't done done.
Okay.
And so I went, opened it up, put a
Hmm.
little salmon outside.
Oh, smart. Look at
Cat
you.
came out. Obviously, it was meant to be a vet. It was just I just didn't know it at the time.
Just
So
didn't know at the very beginning.
right, right. But
That's
yeah, that
awesome.
cat was in the wall.
That's
So
horrifying.
there you go. Have someone check on your cats.
Yeah,
They
honestly,
can
yeah,
get
it's
blocked or be in the wall.
yeah, or be in the wall.
Or
That's
be in the wall. You just
that's a
never
lesson
know.
I've learned today. Or
Yeah.
they can be in the wall. That's horrifying.
Yeah. Crazy,
Oh,
right?
that is crazy. I don't have any cool stories like that one. I'm glad the cat's okay though. That's the most important
Yeah,
thing.
cat was
So
great. Cat did fine and didn't
yeah,
block. So there you go.
even better. So
You got
that's the
salmon.
goal today. Don't block.
Don't let your cat get blocked. No,
Yeah,
but really do get to know your cat's urinary
mm,
conditions. Talk to your vet about what you can do to optimize their environment. If you're going to let them
mm,
outside, what you can do to protect them going outside, the vaccines that they need, the dewormings that they need,
yeah,
preventatives, things like that, because there are some things you can prevent them
yeah.
from getting. Um, and then be willing to deal with, unfortunately, if things happen, injuries or fight wounds and things like that. But ultimately, get to know your cat, know their urinary habits, and if they're going
Yeah.
outside the litter box, they're telling you something, figure out
It's
what it
not
is.
normal. Yeah, I agree. And there's something small plug, a company called Pretty Litter.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much what they do is when your cat urinates in the litter box, it changes color depending on if they have something going on. It doesn't always tell you exactly what's going on, but usually it'll indicate like it's blue or red and it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
It usually means there's a red flag there. So just something to keep an eye out for. I think especially I think it's great for older cats personally, because those issues start happening more and more as they're older. Definitely keep an eye out for if you have a cat that's got a lot of problems and you want to pay attention to their urinary health. It's really not a bad idea to help pay attention to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because there are certain disease processes that I think lend themselves to cats actually starting to get urinary tract infections
Yeah.
where they wouldn't have previously in their younger, healthier lives. And
Hmm.
some of them really mask those things.
Yep.
Even when we're checking like a just like a routine urinalysis, if we have like really, really dilute urine, you
Hmm.
can sometimes miss a infection if you don't culture it or something like that. So
Yeah, and
um,
cats really utilize those 9 lives. Like they're
they do.
incredibly good about hiding things. It's I know it's a joke, but at the same time, it's really not. They're very good
Hmm.
about hiding things till the last minute. And the number of owners that come in and say, "Hey, they were doing fine yesterday. They were eating," and all of a sudden they
Yeah.
come in the next day and their kidney values are like through the roof.
Isn't it
And
amazing what I mean,
they
they'll put up
tolerate a
with a
lot.
lot for a long time. Yeah,
They
they're pretty
really do. It's
incredible.
quite it's impressive
Yeah,
to
it
be
is.
straightforward. It's very impressive, but it's just scary because they can hide things for so long. So
Hmm.
using some of these tools to pay attention, like I said, get to know your cat. It's,
Yeah. Well, and like we said, if you think there's something wrong, you're probably right. It could be little, it could be big,
yes,
but go find out. Go to
yeah.
your vet and have a relationship with your vet. Cats need yearly exams every year, just like dogs do. I think
Mhm.
that's another thing. People are like, "Well, my cat's been healthy. I haven't taken him to the vet in 7 years."
Yeah, don't
Well,
do that.
don't
There's a
do that.
reason. Like I shouldn't do that either. Guys are notoriously bad at that too in human medicine too. Like
Hmm.
go see a doctor. That's all you males out there. Go see a
Yeah,
doctor.
just go see a doctor.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's important. I think the last little plug I'll make is well to talk. I'd be curious one maybe future podcast. Decline. We'll talk about that at some point because I'm curious like what your thoughts are on that. But from the information that I've had so far, you're gonna let your cat be outdoors, at least give them their claws.
Oh, yeah.
It's a defense mechanism. Seen some people not do it, and you're asking for trouble for many different reasons. But it's actually be a de-stressor for them to actually keep their claws for their entire life. I know it can be frustrating. You have to find ways to make sure they don't claw your furniture.
It's a fully natural thing for them to scratch. And you
Yes,
absolutely can teach them not to scratch up your
and
furniture. And
it's
if
a
they
big
do,
de-stressor.
and
So
if they do, you can cap them so they don't destroy your furniture if that's a
yeah,
concern. There are definitely things you can do. I do not declaw cats.
yeah. I never have because I don't do that in the ER, but
No, no,
I
it's
think
not
you
it's
should.
not
Yeah.
something no, I mean I learned how. We were
Huh?
taught in vet
Oh yeah,
school.
we were taught way back
Yeah.
when.
They taught us the boarded surgeons taught us to do it because they didn't
Mhm.
want us not to know how to do it. And I have
Yeah.
certainly revised poorly done ones.
Oh, okay.
Where, so
Interesting.
I'm glad that I know how to do it.
Mhm.
In my first practice, I was expected to do it. And
Oh, okay.
I do not do them now.
Oh, okay, cool.
I
That's
refuse to do them.
and I think more of the field's moving that way, just in general. I think even owners are too, but just in case you didn't hear, leave them their claws. It's a de-stressor for them. It's a defense mechanism for them, and they actually don't use them as much as people think on people. They really don't. It's not something that you have to worry about too much with kids
Well,
or stuff like that.
and I think also there's a misconception. I mean, again, we could get into this on another cast
Yeah,
podcast,
sorry.
but no, that's okay. But I do think you can have a house where you have one declawed cat and another cat that's not. So just because you
Mhm.
had one that was rescued or
Yeah.
something that was declawed, that doesn't require you then to declaw every cat after that. They
Mhm.
they live just fine in harmony
Yep.
without it.
They do
So
great.
but yeah, no, that is my preference, not to declaw cats.
I agree. So,
I'm not
um,
surprised actually. I feel like we come down on the same side of a lot of these
most time we
things.
do. Yeah, I think there's not many things we disagree on, but maybe to spice up the podcast, I'll change opinions one of these days. Who knows? I'll
Yeah,
be
well,
the
I'm just gonna be like, what do you mean? I'm gonna say something just inflammatory one of these
yeah,
days.
just
I
a
don't know. I
light
don't know
devil's
what it is
advocate.
yet, but yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I will say this. I do
Mm.
understand doctors that do it. The doctors that I work with do.
Yeah.
And I understand that their philosophy is if they can do it properly and control pain,
Hmm.
um, then they feel like, I just it's not something I'm comfortable with. So
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
I
do
would
it.
agree.
Yeah, and I do try to give people every resource possible
Mm.
to not make that choice.
And that's why if you need a veterinarian, talk to Dr. Sam Dawson.
Yeah,
You just need to be in Indiana if it's going to happen. So,
exactly. Just come see me. I mean, just
yeah,
come to
just
Indiana,
great.
But
I
anyway,
approve.
did you have anything else you wanted to add about inappropriate elimination, or have we kind of
I think we
covered
covered a
that one,
good
you
base
think?
of it. I think we're good. What do you?
Yeah. Well, hey, if there are more questions and people want to email us, we can cover a topic again if there's something that's burning and people want to know.
Mm-hmm. That's a
So
great, I like that.
All right. Well, you've been listening to Pawsit with Dr. Sam and Dr. Robert, and we really appreciate you coming by. And next time, I think we're going to start talking about toxicities in pets,
Um,
but we're going to kind of do little by little. There's just so much to cover when it comes to that. So it's probably going to be
yeah.
more of a series as we
Yeah.
get through kind of like my dog ate what kind of a thing and my
Chocolate
cat ate
and
what. And yeah.
strings, all sorts. There's
So
plenty of things we can talk about.
yeah, so we're gonna probably run through that in a bit of a systematic kind of format
Yeah.
and make sure that we kind of cover all those topics.
Yep. That sounds great. Well, I can't wait to talk to you guys about it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Cool. Cool. Have a good night, guys.
Good night.